Hi, this is Harold Stam here, Stom here with the American Bohemian, indulging in my narcissism, trying to find kind of a creative endeavor. And I thought it'd be fun to formulate guitar as far as, like my basic theory of the melody and stuff. Um, this is your basic acoustic guitar. I've had this guitar for like 20 years. I devalued it, so I'll never ever pawn it. It was never really pawnable anyway. But I thought it was just fun to like make a little art piece out of it. These are all stickers, and I've collected, and people like drawn on it, and I've got people like sign the back of it and shit. But I've played shows with this guitar before, coffee shops and stuff, and I bust with this guitar. And I played I play open mics with this every now and then. Um, the last like real like not even professional. I used to play way back in the day with like opened up for some punk rock kids and stuff, doing punk rock like kind of stuff. I had a band for a minute called the Lovesick Drunks, and then I had a whatever. I played in a couple of different bands, not really ever, but just could never really keep a band together as much. And I've always liked playing music, so I just decided, no, I'm just gonna start playing like folk kind of acoustic kind of stuff. And I got sort of like sick of the whole just 3 chord kind of la la la. You know what I'm talking about? You got your good three. Like there's a lot of good stuff with that, but like if I thought if I was gonna take like the guitar seriously, I think I should, if I'm gonna pursue playing guitar or being into guitar, it's sort of the process, with the instrument. It's a spiritual instrument in a sense, because you can create like a certain energy or like with it, depending on the platform of guitar that you use. The difference between minor notes and major notes. Major notes more put onto there's different resonances, different sound frequencies you hit when every note you hit is just like basically a sound vibration that go that have certain resonances to them, and different sound frequencies affect the brain in different ways as far as how the reaction is as far as that goes. And Bernie 2020. Never mind. That's my advertisement for this whole video. Vote Bernie on 2020 because he got ripped off the last election. But different melodies, different phrasings and melodies have the different melodies or notes are they're set. Um, and rhythm is really important too. Getting the certain rhythm kind of helps dial in a little bit, and then you put that good melody and you kind of sit onto that. But I've found it's better with the melodies to not sort of like, and I've got myself stuck in a rut with this like musically a lot, because people sometimes they have like a weird reaction if you're not doing like, it's easier to get a song stuck in somebody's head, which can be a good thing, but it's like a whole different ethos that's involved with it, depending on what you want to do with music as an art form, or with like guitar and such. And it would like taking more of a existentialist approach to the outlet of such things, and no real real like obsession about not really obsessing about hitting like a. It's hard to explain that. But when you focus in on like playing with certain melody lines, once you kind of help to like induce that certain state, when you kind of let go into certain types of music, especially like really good classic example is like Japanese sitar. No, not Japanese sitar, but yeah, shoto, like the Japanese style of more of a freestyle, and the same thing with like Persian and like music from India as well too, where they it's like this old science that's been around for a while, where the combination between like the rhythm and the melody helps put you in a certain like helps you in a meditative state, and then from that meditative state you kind of like develop like a dialogue within the melody of the music where and I think that that's pretty good process as far as which to go, like because you can do what you want with like traditional sound, like traditional Western music. Like I really like a lot, like folk and bluegrass, and I like progressive rock and stuff like that too. And like you come to the different elements, it's like how do you come to something different? I mean, like, you do another. Of course, you like try to go back to like the basics, like like the Stones or like Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd or Crimson or or Zappa or like all the people that kind of laid out all the major groundworks for rock music further on. But I think when you try to come to find like your own space as far as using an instrument, and I had this whole idea about like what is the philosophy of playing an instrument, because you have an instrument and utilizing this as like a tool, as for projection to other people or just for your own benefit or merit as like a discipline of the instrument. And I decided well shit, like I'm gonna practice a lot, I'm gonna play guitar a lot, because guitar is like for me, like I played guitar since I was like 7 years old, and it's like a very soothing thing for me. And I think that that's kind of reflected in some of the music that a lot of the kind of music I listen to. Like I listen to a lot of Persian stuff, and I listen to a lot of Rajas, and I listen to like a lot of sitar, but I also like some Western stuff. Like I like opera a lot, like old opera, the slower opera stuff, more like. But I don't, the way I mess around with music, I don't write it onto like a verse, chorus, verse sort of thing. And I like kind of like the spiritual thing, not a spiritual thing, but more of like it's like a stereotype, but jazz was like the real first American music that kind of found that same spot or space that Eastern music has had for like hundreds of years before that, maybe in thousands of years. And but even like within jazz, it got more transcendental within the medium. Like some of the stuff that like Miles Davis did was just there's a couple of jazz albums I've had that were just like whoa. And like I don't really like jazz. It's not my favorite art form, but I like that. I think it's a real test of musicianship, of being testing as your skill as someone who is a guitar player. Like anybody can write a hit, like a hit pop song. It's a real basic formula. It doesn't require, like, I mean, if you look at the Beatles were great songwriters, but and you can tell that their producer that they had helped kind of drag them along into further progression, progressive, more progressive type elements, possibly, like, you know, like. But if you, they weren't probably like the most technical musicians ever. The Beatles weren't, and once I discovered, you know, like King Crimson and of course Pink Floyd. Like Pink Floyd's kind of like one of those like stereotypical like prog. I mean, they're the one when you talk about like progressive rock's like, oh, it's Pink Floyd and King Crimson. But I think there certain bands like that, they become sort of like monoliths in a way, just because of the breadth that they've cut out with that. You can't really avoid, you know, like, you know, if you're into metal, you can't really avoid Metallica, because Metallica cut a huge swath and laid out a lot of these sort of groundwork that came ahead that everybody had to sort of fight against their, because they pushed so far out with their, you know, their stuff. They saturated music so much with their sound that, and it's no different with like, you know, like Black Sabbath or the Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin or, you know, anything like that, you know, like or Creedence, or, you know, like I'm a big Grateful Dead fan too. I like Grateful Dead a lot, and I like Jimi Hendrix a lot. I think Jimi Hendrix is the guy that really got me into. So like, but and of course I went down like the whole racket with, I think Kurt Cobain just like ruined me for guitar playing for a good decade of my life. It was really, but you get back to like the basic elements of guitar playing, you know, like I'm not so much about making pop music or even considering like mainstreaming what I do. I just like, I'm compelled to do it, and I'm compelled to improve upon my craftsmanship. So at least if I share it with somebody, they're like, oh, well, he knows how to do that, he's good at that, you know, and I can just, but it's something that I preoccupy myself, and then like I don't like try to like, which is kind of a pain in the ass in a way, because like I have extreme difficulties in dealing with society, which kind of like makes it, you know, like I survive quite well with my life. I live very comfortably, but I'm just adept at like being frugal as possible. And but so like sitting here living off of a pension, and I have this preoccupation with music, and I think it's a healthy thing. I think that art and creativity is definitely a very good positive outlet for a person to have. I think that especially if you have people who are struggling with like mental health issues or health issues in general, having that creative outlet or an output kind of gives you like this way to balance off, you know, it's, I don't really know how to explain that. It's like that mental space of which you find like sort of your inner peace, sort of. But I'll show you, I guess, sort of a classic example of this riff that I'm talking about here. Just for my own indulgence, is another indulgence that I do just to fill up a little time, you know what I'm saying? But this is open A tuning, I think it is. Sometimes I just let it. That bugs a lot of other musicians that I play with, is because sometimes it'll be an open A tuning, and then I like to loosen up the strings. I'll drop it down like a little, like a half step lower, or sometimes I'll do like a half step higher, and it kind of throws people off a little bit. And I've been messing with like capos and stuff too, just like, but so like an open A, that's like just, nah, it's kind of bad sound, but that's just like a, it's essentially, this is an open or sort of a drone chord, and then you can like work up and down on the scales like such, like. That was a bad example, but I got to learn from the scale, like a scale from here to there, then down through here, so like. And then once you get to know the scales from, I would, like, it's a good thing because then you have like more of a breadth that you can walk with when you're playing. And I think that's sort of a good thing when you do like progressive style rock. So you have like your main riff, you're like, I'm gonna do like this, I'm you have sort of do more immediate key changes. But if you know the layout of the neck and you have your basic, your mapping down, and it's just kind of sort of like a practice of like going down and like, I was raised, I had some teachings when I was in high school. And my father at the time paid for me to have some guitar lessons, and I studied under this guy that was going to college for music for a bit, and so I like sat around and like worked on the basic, like the pentatonic scales and the minor pentatonic scales and some of the Philhadrian scales and this and that scales, and but I think it's really good to learn the width and breadth of the neck, and then you can build on from that. And I've started to just pull out like different forms of chord phrasings from finding where the spot, finding down, like, oh, well, on this part of the neck on the scale, and this is a basic, what I call like the upside down bar chord, because it's like a bar chord, but up, down, upside down. And you can tell it has sort of a happier tinge to it because and this is like on the other end, which is like a downward. And then, which is kind of nice because like when you have a certain song structure, and a lot of what I do is like, oh, there's going to be like a particular song, you're like, oh, you're like, and you have you build up and you got your melody, your basic chord structure that you have, what you call like your bass song structure, and then can sort of go off in your jam space, like. Something like that, you know what I'm saying? Like open up the space for it. I've gone way too long in this video, but I think that I've gone too long. But what I was basically saying is that I'm gonna have to finish it up, I guess. There's certain particular basics that go along with that I found to like button this up is like what I consider like the discipline of guitar playing. Like, yeah, it's good to have your basics down, like your baby chords, talking like all the baby chords. But it's also really good to explore other tunings and stuff. And so, like, I like playing the traditional guitar tuning, but my favorite has always been the open A tuning, just for its resonance, and it's a lot easier to run up the scales and go off into like different keys and stuff and radiate the rhythm, and like with like the ambience of like the open strings and the the buzz to it, because you can fit in sort of the same spaces of melodies that you'll see like with like the rajas and like sitar and stuff like that, where you can like do your best approximation. Like, I mean, I think it's to me it feels like the farthest you can take as far as like fleshing out the musicality of an instrument as a single instrument unaccompanied without being able to. And I've been able to play, at certain points, like multiple melodies at the same time while doing that, where you have these different melodies that'll come up and come down, and it's not entirely like a conscious thing, because I'll go and kind of like just kind of zone out and like meditate in the music in itself, and then I always try to make sure I have it on tape, because then like later on I can sort of not exactly recreate what I've done, but kind of pick out some of the melodies that I find within the process. But it is always kind of fun because I like sometimes I don't find new territory with it, but it always comes out really interesting, and being able to have like that basis of or ground, area which you a lot more, like if you're playing like basic 3-chord or 4-chord rock or verse chorus verse rock, it's okay. It's not as much fun. I mean, like there's something about I'm not saying there's nothing against traditional song structure and stuff, or writing like a verse chorus verse song, but I kind of enjoy the impromptu-ness of sort of a more improvisational playing, especially when I do live, because that kind of just helps. Like, I feel like when I can go back to certain jams that I had, and I like try to like have them on tape or something, like, oh, I remember what space I was in at that time playing guitar, or getting into like with different, and because a lot of the performances that when I actually do live performances, I'm like, I've been playing around with those melodies for a while, like I build up like my bag of riffs that I would take with me, and like, oh, I got this riff and I got that riff, I get that riff, and then when I sometimes I'll like take those riffs and I'll like, okay, well, I'll take that riff and I'll expand upon that, and I'll go off into like sort of a solo spirit, kind of wander around and then come back with another riff. But sometimes it's kind of fun where you can take one riff and kind of piece it to another one, and be able to drag it out and drag it in, and then like maybe take one that you've worked on, like slow it down a little bit, and then maybe speed it back up, or sort of finding the empty, finding between spaces, but being able to like have an audience, or people in front of you when you're gonna pushing out and exploring like melody and its concept, in like that setting where you can like, and I think that's where the ultimate essence, I think, is the art form, is like when you find like the hits of their brain like that, you can tell that like I put people to sleep playing guitar. I used to put my kids to sleep playing guitar. And that was fun, but it's really interesting to be able to like fine tune and notice that like there's a psychological effect not just internally, because you can use the musical process as a means of like internally processing emotionality, or trying to find, it has very, meditative processes to listen to music, but it can be even more meditative process to actually be in the formation, or the playing of music, not just like songwriting per se, but using an instrument as sort of like a tonal expression, And I'm not trying to use like these like bougie spiritual whatnots or anything like that, but it is like there is kind of like a spiritual state that you can reach playing through an instrument, and it's the ultimate. It can be like the ultimate form of spiritual connection with other people in the most ideal situation. Um, and that's why I always said that like music is always like the most spiritual of all the art forms. Music is the one that it always manages to be able to like pierce through the more intellectual side of the psyche, and hit more, if you do it just right, it hits you just, like if you're having a, you look at the more extremes of such as like um, metal music kind of hits like that point of anger, and then you get like certain types of music that have that emotive or emotional presence that no other art forms really have, and it's like the most ethereal and because what really is it? I mean, like a lot of other art forms are more visual. They're definitely like a visual art form, so you have like the immediacy of that impact, with relation. That's more of an intellectual thing, and like um, music though, it hits more you on like a primal level. It's like because it's one of the sound is like the first real expression, and the primality is like a lot of the basis of conveying and sharing emotion or emotionality. But there are definitely specifics where like music it connects on even the higher levels or higher planes even, or it can cause an affectation, and it's an interesting thing to see when you really can reach that sort of connection between using this expression that's the sound frequencies and things like that, and innotations and melodies, and then in combination with meditation while during that process, like you almost like summon the wind sometimes, it seems like, and it's really interesting. But yeah, I think that music is like the highest art form, and I'm not saying I'm a master of it by any chance, but and the hardest thing I found is like catching that magic in the bottle when I try to put it on tape, or I have recording gear and stuff like that, and it's like sometimes it works, but for the most part, I'm not quite. It's very difficult to translate that experience on tape, and then sort of like it ends up getting kind of degraded in the production process. So I like experimented a little bit with like doing like anti-production and like and stuff like that too, but it's kind of an interesting thing to do. But anyway, that's it. Anyway, guitar is a great instrument. I just think that people should work better at like trying to expand further beyond certain basic stuff, and maybe like I myself have found like a nice sweet spot which I've been able to work with. So